in there. So what are they doing? They're harvesting something. And that is the thing that really puts a chill down my spine. So what I'm trying to say is, if these things aren't exposed for what they might be doing, maybe we have to look out. Maybe it's the Euro-Caucasians that are the main target of these people. And that's really what I'm trying to say in the book, that it's really something we have to look at, because the racial type of outlook is a way they might actually have genetically instructed us to take care of the type of being they're making that is of use to them. And it may be that it's the Euro-Caucasians that are the mark that they're looking at. And that's what I would like people to be aware of. And I warn them in the book that it might well be, something that, Europeans in the Northern Hemisphere, who are the most powerful, shall we say, in terms of world logistics and control and so on, these people really need to do that. David Jacobs, in his book, The Threat, says that one of the people in his book, I can quote this to you, called Alison Reed, was shown alien plans for a perfect future. And she was shown a beautiful park scene with people having picnics and playing ball. She asked to distinguish hybrids from normal human beings. She notes that in the park, they were all white. Everybody's Caucasian. There's no Spanish, black, or Oriental. She was shown strange life-sized holograms of several beings, all white. Now, there must be some mechanism here they're trying to create. It may be an idealized white future, but in fact, if that is so, we have to understand what kind of price we all have to pay for that to come about, if you see what I'm trying to say, if they're doing this all covertly. And where are they taking these beings? Where are they taking these people? It might be a wonderful story they might tell us, but they may just be after the DNA that these people have to harvest, if you like, and make their own type of beings in their own terms, in their own fashion. And that is certainly something to think about without getting, if I may say so, too paranoid about it. Really, it is something we all right, if it's not going to happen, we've really lost nothing. It's an interesting story. But what if it is true?
I'm wondering if it's all coming to a crescendo now, though, because they've been around for thousands of years, and all of a sudden now, there seems to be here more abducting people.
You make a very good point there. It may be that they have now developed the species to a point where in some kind of way there is a DNA transfer more plausible, their type of synthetic DNA into us. And that is what I'm really scared about, is that maybe we will get something like a SIM card man, if you like, that we might be injected with some tiny little speck of whatever that allows them control over all of us. And maybe a small cartel might be the powerhouse generating this, unbeknown to most of us, if you see what I'm trying to say.
That's the concern at the moment, within the kind of conspiracy circles, that they want to put implants in everybody, and certainly those that are abducted have had implants put in them, haven't they? Yeah, well, they say this. People claim that, yes. And I mean, I haven't actually seen physical evidence myself to support, I mean, personally, I haven't seen it. Of course, I know the literature and so on that says that they do. But, the two researchers that I really admire and have the best view of are Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, Dr. David Jacobs. And they have done some wonderful research on abductees and so on, and very, very upstanding men. They even tried to rubbish David Jacobs recently with some setup in America or whatever. And they'll do anything to try and stop the truth maybe from emerging. Yeah. And they say, these two chaps, they say in the last 20 years, they have accelerated from their abduction stories that come out from their subjects. They say that in the last 20 years, they're accelerating the hybrid program. So you're quite right, something seems to be working to a crescendo. And I think that maybe somehow we ought to get at least out there in the world the idea that, what are we going to do if in some kind of way a system is announced or produced that says you take
an injection for this, that, or the other. And, these days, in order to find your horse, you've got a tiny... my horses have these little inserts put in them, and I can use the machine and locate them or whatever. It just takes a tiny fraction of silicon or whatever it is these days to write something in that might well control all of us. And that would be then the loss of our capacity to regain some kind of eternal frame of existence. And that's the big deal, Ian. If you lose the power of your soul field to come back and go and learn or whatever it is indefinitely, that is bigger than just losing your life. If we have this capacity to us that we can live on forever, if you see what I'm trying to say, in some kind of way, as the great teachers stood testament to, and Jesus Christ himself. And I want to talk about this individual because of what they're discovering in science terms in a moment. Dr. Silverman is an authority on this, and he'd like to talk to you about an incredible thing that he'd witnessed at a recent meeting in Italy for scientists researching the Shroud of Turin that actually points, it's not irrelevant. And it's not religious. It's really something that's very plausible in terms of scientific things, methodologies and so on. And if this man stood affirmation, this being stood affirmation that we have this property that gives us continuance eternally, and then some artificial type of creature, a robot, for its own purposes comes and piggybacks on each one of us and our capacity to do this, that is a big, big deal. Even if you rant and are paranoid about it, even the slightest possibility that this might be true might in fact encourage, hopefully, all of us to say, no, hang on a minute, let's check this out before this happens, Anyway, I think that Dr. Silverman would be able to talk with much more authority on this incredible artifact called the Shroud of Turin, which we went and listened to recently in Frascati in Italy, where the Italians got together a large symposium of very, very distinguished scientists to look at the verity of this thing,
Fantastic. Go for it.
Yeah, well, actually, we came from sort of various parts of the world to this conference. People from the UK, United States, and from Italy, from Middle East as well. Basically, I need to say a little bit about the Turin Shroud first before I start, just for those people who aren't very familiar with it. It's a 14-foot long piece of cloth which has an imprint on it of the body of a man that has been studied in great detail by scientists who have actually found. This was actually discovered around the end of the 19th century when photography was first discovered, that they took a photograph of the Turin Shroud, and the photographer who did it, Secondo Pia, nearly fainted when he saw the negative image of the shroud, because the negative image of the shroud is a positive. The shroud itself is a perfect photographic negative. Now, I just want to get something out of the way right from the start, because a lot of people who might be listening to this will be thinking, oh, yeah, of course, the Turin Shroud, that's a medieval forgery, or it was made by Leonardo da Vinci, or whatever the latest thing is that people are saying about it. Actually, of course, that's not actually true. There's some great work was done by Benford and Marino in the States, people who looked at this in a very objective way and found that actually when they look in detail at the part of the cloth that was dated, it's actually what's called a reweave. That actually there was part of the Turin Shroud had been damaged at the corners where it had been carried and where people had cut bits off it to sell as relics and so on, and it had been sewn in. A part had been sewn in of cloth of cotton onto the linen at a later stage, had been woven together with the linen and actually formed a sort of matrix, if you like, of the two together. That there's a mixture there, what has been shown to be a mixture of 16th century cloth and 1st century cloth, and hence the amalgam of the two, which has given the carbon dating to be at some time in the 14th century. Now, interestingly, the different labs who did the carbon dating the part that they actually dated was only centimeters away from the part that the other labs dated, and yet each of them came up with different dates. If you look at the actual figures, way beyond the variation that you'd expect by sheer chance, as though these bits of cloth that were so close to each other are actually